Alright, so hello everyone and welcome back to Strategy Sunday, Volume 18, this time looking at Luke Cage himself, the big man with the skin like titanium. Right, let's jump right into it. The basic stats. 13 health, melee for Luke himself, move 2, and then Misty Knight as a sidekick, ranged 6 health. So first of all, 13 health is pretty low for a melee fighter. Um, move 2 also not so cool since it limits your mobility a lot. However, having a 6 health sidekick is pretty nice to have a total health pool of 19. That sounds way better than just 13 health on its own. But of course, the most important thing is Misty is ranged. You definitely always appreciate to have a ranged sidekick. It definitely incentivizes your opponent to um, kill the sidekick first to like limit your range. So you can absorb a lot of damage on her and play around that. It definitely helps a lot also to have a second large body on the board for more board control. It's always appreciated. You have 13 unique cards, so it can often feel a little inconsistent, even more so when we consider how those 13 cards are distributed, which you will probably see in a few minutes what I mean by that. Um, the character ability. Luke Cage takes 2 less combat damage from attacks. When defending, Luke Cage wins combat if he takes no damage even if he didn't play a card. Now, taking 2 less combat damage is just insane as an ability. Um, this does not work like any of the +1 defense abilities that we've seen, in which case I think this would be a lot more balanced, um, because this this applies even if you're not defending. If your card has a value of 0, you still take 2 less combat damage. If Robin Hood, for example, attacks you with Highway Robbery into any card, and your card value gets ignored, your card value has a value of 0, but you still don't take damage because you take 2 less combat damage, no matter what happens. That's insane. No matter what your opponent attacks with, you take 2 less combat damage. That makes your 13 health look way more juicier than it usually would. Because technically, in most games, Luke works like a 17 to 18 health fighter just due to this ability, which is, it's insane. Um, Gladly, this only works for Luke himself and not for Misty. Um, but it still is so much value that you get out of this. Also, the good thing is any type of effect damage still works, thank God. So if Little Red, for example, attacks you with Once Upon a Time, the 3 effect damage will still go through fully. This only takes less combat damage, not effect, and also fatigue damage still works. Not like as with Conjure. Yeah. So insanely strong ability, but of course it also depends on what defense cards you have, on how strong this exactly is. But we'll need a bit of time until we actually get to those. So yeah, let's jump into Sweet Christmas, my lads. Maybe I should have waited with the Luke guide a bit more to actually have this as a good greet to you. But yeah, it's a 6 value attack, boost value of 1, 2 copies, nothing else. Print 6. Huge. That's insane damage output. We've already seen with Bigfoot's Larger Than Life, the log, how insanely strong Print 6s can be. This card usually means a guaranteed 2 combat damage whenever you play it, which is just really, really good. That means usually you have 4 damage already just by playing these 2 cards, sometimes even more if your opponent does have suboptimal blocks. Um, this is an insanely good feint punish because it would deal 4 damage over the feint and the opponent didn't feint any effects, so perfect. Um, Sadly, you only have 2 copies, but maybe you have more. Who knows? Commanding Impact. Hey, we have another 5 value attack now. It's an any. Boost value of 1. After combat, draw 1 card, and you have 3 copies. So, Commanding Impact. We know Commanding Impact from other decks like T-Rex or Sinbad, for example. 5 value attacks are always great. Again, drawing 1 card after combat also helps you to keep up the hand advantage and the pressure. So you can always just go in, smack them, they lose 1 card, you replace your card with another one. So you keep up the draw, you can smack them even harder next turn. Really, really good. Also, this is an any card, so Misty can throw this from range, which is just insane. Like, holy macaroni. Um, Now, we already have two sixes and three fives to throw. What, like, that's like the damage potential of most decks just all in these five cards. And again, this is a great feint punish as before, although Luke doesn't have many attacks that you actually want to feint, but especially this one has some cool interactions. Next one, Get Paid. It's a 4-value attack for Luke himself. Boost value of 2. It says after combat, if you won the combat, draw 2 cards, and you have 2 copies. So 4-value attacks are also always just good overall. Average block value is 3, so you'll usually deal 1 combat damage. Most of the time, drawing 2 cards when you win the combat is great, since it can help you again with hand advantage and keep up pressure. And as you see, you have a lot of red cards, so you might not have too many blocks. So drawing a lot of cards to be more threatening to your opponent might be a good solution to that. Sadly, again, this is reliant on winning the combat, which can of course be played around. There are a lot of 4-value blocks now, or just cancels as well. Although you definitely don't want to throw a cancel into Luke attacking usually, because it could just be a 6. Um, Same as Bigfoot, you don't really want to use your cancels on defense. Um, Also, this being a Luke only card, um, will mean more often than not this probably won't trigger, because your opponent will often just throw their big blocks into Luke himself, since he's the one with the print 6s. He's the main hero. He can also throw the commanding, so they'll usually block pretty high. Or if they definitely don't want you to draw the cards, they'll just wait until Luke gets in and block for 4, or even take the risk with a feint. So it makes this card a bit more predictable, although it's not the worst thing in the world if this doesn't apply and you don't get the 2 cards, since it most of the time just means, well, your opponent used a 4-value block that wasn't used for one of your 6s, so I guess you're fine with that. And then next up, hey, the cards until now were pretty simple. Now we have Still Standing. 4-value attack, 2 copies. It's an any, boost value of 2, and it says after combat. If you want the combat, choose 2 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. Oof. 4-value attacks, first of all, are good. Again, average block value of 3, 1 to combat damage, usually. But holy shit, this effect is insane. Shuffling 2 cards from your discard pile back into your deck is just huge if we're talking value-wise. You could shuffle back another 2 print 6 attacks, which is like bonkers. Bigfoot is so strong because he has 3 of those. If you just trigger 1 of these, you can have 4. What the fuck? Um, this can also create an infinite loop if you recur the second copy of this. For example, you play the first one, get back 2 6s, and then the second one you can get back the first one that you already played and add some other card. So technically, if your opponent never stops this, you have an infinite card deck. And hey, if like damage isn't a problem, having infinite card deck, yippee. um, it is reliant on winning combat again, so there are ways to stop it, but every time you trigger this, it just adds huge value to your deck. Now, let's dive a bit deeper on that, how you can actually stop this from applying. Any discard effects, of course. Once you played the first one, if they discard the second one, you can't actually get it back. Then the effect itself, winning combat, so the opponent will have to defend for 3 or lower. So if you play a skirmish into the second one of these, for example, you also stop the effect, or feint again also works. So those are like the main methods the opponent usually has to get rid of these. But since you throw so many high value attacks, actually guessing when the Still Standing will come out is pretty hard for them to do, because they kind of want to throw their max value blocks into every single of your attacks. So you can definitely deplete their good defenses and maybe make this less predictable. Also, instead, with Get Paid, for example, it was a Luke only attack. This is an enemy, so Misty can throw this from range, making it even less predictable than usual. So usually, like these kind of attacks, maybe She-Hulk has Sensational, where if you win the combat with a 4 and shuffle something back, it is just bound to that one hero, in that case She-Hulk, but now you have two bodies that can both throw it, and that just makes it even worse for the opponent to actually guess when it's coming. I think I would like it more if this was a Luke only card. Um, in that case, I think it would be a bit more fair because then you can narrow it down a bit more. But in this case, it's just overall just insanely strong. This can give you an insane fatigue game. So once the first one has played, your opponent will always have to think about when the second one is coming, which of course also has the implications that you want to bait out their big defenses before with just your normal large attacks, and then maybe at the end you can get the loop of this and win at fatigue if you don't seem to have the damage somehow. So baiting defenses can be really key. Also, I'd recommend to try to use the first one as early as possible to have more time for the second to trigger. Because, for example, if you use the first one as like your third attack and then you shuffle back two cards, so you still have, I don't know, 20 cards left in deck, your opponent now has to exactly think over that whole 20 card duration when is the second coming. Whereas if you only have 5 cards left in deck, well, there are only like maybe 3 or 4 chances for you to throw this anymore, so they can narrow it down pretty easily. Whereas if you play the first one early, it's really hard for them to know. If they play a discard effect, maybe chose discard, maybe you didn't draw it yet because there are just so many cards left. Or if they think, well, now it's coming and they lose their last skirmish, well, if you didn't throw it yet, well, you have a good you have a good time. So I'd always recommend to use the first one as early as possible, just to keep your opponent worried and just threaten the existence of this. Like, as always with Unmatched, sometimes just the existence of a card is way more threatening than actually playing it. This is one of the best examples for that. But yeah, let's jump into the next one. And again, an attack card. Woohoo! Hero for Hire. It's a 3 value attack for Luke only, with a boost value of 1. It says during combat, you may boost this attack. You have 3 copies. So 3 value attacks are okay. Usually won't deal any damage by their own, but being able to boost this, of course, well, that makes this 3 a lot higher than it usually is. Highest boost value in your deck is a 3, so this can again get upwards of a 6 value attack, which, if you're seeing a trend here, Luke has very high attacks. um, Best thing about this card, of course, is you can always decide whether to boost or not after you see your opponent's card, so this also makes this a great bait attack. If you maybe attack with this and your opponent defend with, let's say, a skirmish, you know, okay, the skirmish is out, that's one less block I have to worry about with still standing, and you can just decide not to boost. So in that case, they use a 4-value block for a 3-value attack, which is of course worse than actually using the full 4-value block, for example, for a 4-value attack. So in that case, this is a really good block card, bait card, I mean. It's a block card, yeah, sure. So yeah, you feel a bit sad, of course, if this gets fainted, but at least, I mean, it creates some mind games, I guess, that the opponent wants to feint this, but not really your other big attacks. So there are some mind games there, but usually they just don't play feints at all, or if they don't have anything else. So yeah, overall, decent card. It's not the best since you're still trading 2 for 1 if you're boosting, but yeah, I mean, you don't complain about another way to have a 6-value attack. And then we get to the first Misty card, which is Daughter of the Dragon. It's a 2-value versatile, boost value of 2. It says during combat, if Misty Knight is adjacent to the opposing fighter, the value of this card is 6 instead. You see a trend here. 2-value versatiles are okay overall. I mean, nothing great to write home about, but being able to defend Misty with a 6 against melee fighters is huge, because of course melee fighters, whenever they attack Misty, they will be adjacent to her. Except if they're maybe using the map on Hell's Kitchen, but that's one single item token on one single map, so yeah. Uh, Usually this will be a 6 against melee fighters. That is of course really good, because it gives Misty a lot of survivability. This can full block a log from Bigfoot, which is just insane. Basically, this is, you have a 6 value, 6 health sidekick that can just block for 6s. Cool. If your opponent attacks you from range, you of course feel a bit sad if you have to play this, but sometimes it can still be worth, because just having that ranged sidekick is very important to you. and it just creates a lot of more opportunities for you to attack. Um, on the other hand, if you decide to attack with this card, well, you have another two 6-value attacks, because why not? This card can create some cool mind games with Misty if you just purposely go adjacent to the opposing fighter, even if you don't have to, um, just to threaten this card. So they are incentivized to feint this because it's still a print 2, but then you throw something like a commanding impact um, to punish the feint. So that's really cool. Um, so even if you don't have to go adjacent with Misty to attack, you often just can do it just to bait out a feint and then punish with one of your high printed attacks. Really cool. Of course, that also puts Misty in danger since she is adjacent to the opponent, but if you have the right blocks to do it, or the opponent is just that low in hand count, definitely try it. Um, what I want to say definitely is watch out for offensive feints when using this on defense, because any character that has any higher value feint, maybe because they're +2 character like Moon Knight, let's say Alice, or just She-Hulk who has a 4-value offensive feint, that of course will feint the effect of this becoming a 6, so it would just be a 2. So this can be really relevant, especially in the She-Hulk, Moon Knight, and Alice matchups, which are some of the matchups that you probably in competitive play will see most often with Luke, or maybe Angry Achilles as well. So definitely watch out for those whenever you play this. But other than that, this is just a great card overall. Just another 6 in your arsenal. You don't complain about that. Then we get Pushback. It's another Misty card and also another 2-value versatile, this time with a boost value of 3. It says after combat, move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces. You have 2 copies. Now, 2-value versatiles, again, are okay, and this time it doesn't shift to a 6. Wow, that's something new. Being able to move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces can be quite nice to push them next to Luke for a nice double attack. Maybe they thought, okay, I'll just attack Misty and try to get rid of her while I'm at safe distance and Luke just can't instantly go for me. You play this on defense, yeah sure, Misty might take 2 damage maybe, um, but you can live with that, and then you push them next to Luke, which they maybe didn't expect, and now you can double attack them with 2 6s, because why not? So that can be really good. Otherwise, this can also be a good bait attack. If you want to threaten something that's still standing and bait out something like a skirmish, that can be really nice with this. Otherwise, it usually is pretty good if you want to kite with advantage for some reason and make the opponent boost their maneuver, because most characters, of course, are move 2. So whenever you move them 3 spaces away, they will usually have to boost to get to you. So that is also a good use for this card, but what I found most often, this will be used to boost up Hero for Hire to get another 6, or to move 5 spaces. Because Luke is of course a move 2 fighter, and this and the next card are the only boost 3s in his deck, so you definitely have to watch out for those. I'll get more into detail with that for the next card, but watch out that you don't spend all of these early. Regroup. Ah, we love to see Regroup. Have we covered Regroup on this deck already, on this channel already? I don't know. Maybe. We've done too many. We've done too many characters. Then I can't remember. Um, so Regroup, of course, is a 1-value versatile in any this time, so both Luke and Misty can use it. It has another boost value of 3, and it says after combat, draw 1 card. If you won the combat, draw 2 cards instead. You have 3 copies. So 1-value versatiles are usually used as a bait attack. That's what they excel in, especially Regroup, which of course after combat draws 1 card, so you can replace the card that you just used, while your opponent probably can't do that, and they used probably a better block than a 1. So you're getting a good value trade out of that, and it's pretty good. However, in Luke's deck, this card has another cool use, because of course if you play this with Luke on defense, it basically acts like a 3-value defense, and as we saw with Luke's ability, if you don't take damage on defense, combat damage, you win the combat. So if the opponent attacks you with a 3 and you defend with this, even though this is just a 1-value defense, since you don't take combat damage due to Luke's ability, it will still count as if you won the combat, so you will draw the 2 cards. So that's really good. Just drawing one card on a 3-value defense would be nice, but having the option to draw two is even better, especially in a deck like Luke's, which relies on pressure, big attacks, um, keeping the opponent back and just punching them hard. That's really nice to see. Otherwise, this of course can be still used as a bait attack, mostly with Misty from ranged, because with Luke usually you'll have something bigger to smack and you'd rather attack with that. However, this is your only other 3 boost next to pushback, so watch out for this if you play on a move 5 center map, since you have 3 copies of this, 2 copies of pushback, so if you maybe use too many of these as bait attacks or to boost up hero for hire, you might not be able to reach the opponent anymore, because on a move 5 center map they can always stay 5 spaces away, and since you're a move 2 character, if you can't boost with regroup or pushback to move 5, to move 5 spaces, that might be a big problem. So definitely think about this whenever you play on a move 5 center map. But other than that, still good card overall. You don't complain about some regroups. Then we get into the defenses. Trash Talk. 2-value defense. That's an any. Boost value of 1 says immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. And after combat, if you won the combat, end the turn. You have 3 copies. So 2-value defense on their own are okay. This kind of would act like a usual feint, but you have Luke's ability. So you have a 4-value feint on defense. If you watched my Golden Bat video last time, you know how I talked about that 3-value feints just basically negate all the uh, all the counterpoints of actually playing feint, everything to counter feint, because feint is just a 2-value defense, so it can be punished. So all the negatives just get thrown out of the window when you play a 3-value feint. Well, now we have a 4-value feint, because why not? This is hands down one of the strongest defense cards in the game, and to be honest, I don't think it's because of the cancel. I think it's because of the after combat effect. Um, Not many characters have more than maybe 2 ways to actually win combat against this. So whenever you go in and attack the opponent, they can't just attack you first action and then maneuver away to kite you, because if you play this and you win the combat against the first attack that they made, you end the turn, even if they still have an additional action left. So you can steal an action from them. They end adjacent to you because, of course, any move and effect will be stopped because there's also a cancel. And then you can freely double attack them. That makes attacking Luke so scary whenever you don't have optimal defenses, maybe. So it's insane. Even if you don't have it, you can just maneuver up to them and next to them and say, come on, attack me. And just threaten this trash talk. So they'll always probably just maneuver away and then attack from range if they're a ranged fighter, or just double maneuver if they're melee. It makes you so scary because your opponent knows if they attack you at the wrong time, you trash talk, you end their turn before they can do anything else, and then you double smack them with 6s. That can be a huge punish. So this card is insane. Insane. And of course, it's an any, so you could technically also defend Misty with it, which is nice, because in that case, the opponent can't just farm effects on her because you still have a cancel for her, but optimally, of course, you keep Misty safe on ranged, and then go dog shit with Luke, go next to them and just say, hit me, try. Yeah, this card is insane. And then we get Power Man, another 2-value block, this time for Luke only. It has a boost value of 1, and it says after combat, move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces. You may move them through other opposing fighters. Deal 1 damage to them and each opposing fighter they moved through. So 2-value defenses again are okay, but well, since this is a Luke only defense, you will only play with Luke, so it will basically always be a 4. Just because of your ability. And 4-value blocks are really, really good. They're great. Moving the opposing fighter is quite nice to prevent some double attacks. If you maybe don't have trash talk, you ended adjacent to them, they still had the bolts to attack you, and you were like, oh shit, well, I don't have any other defenses. You can just move them 3 spaces away, and you're nice. Other than that, you can also, of course, push them adjacent to Misty to get maybe a good Daughter of the Dragon attack next turn, which can be quite nice. But other than that, also dealing the 1 auto damage is always appreciated. I don't think you needed that with so many sixes, but I mean, auto damage is auto damage, you don't complain. Um, and other than that, since you can move maybe the opposing fighter through other opposing fighters, and it deals 1 damage to all of them, this is really good to clear off 1 health sidekicks. This is especially prevalent in the Sun Wukong matchup, where he really has to think about his clone positioning, because he can't just surround you and pin you with them or whatever, because Power Man exists, you can move 1 clone through the others and then all die. That is really good. Generally, if your opponent has more than 1 body, so multiple fighters on the board, they will always have to think and position around this. Maybe also the Yananga matchup is quite interesting for that. Um, of course, they could just don't care and take the additional 1 damage on their fighters, but um, they definitely have to think about it. And even if they do, well, you get the extra damage. That's nice. So again, huge block that makes 5 4-value blocks now, 3 of which are end the turn cancels, which is bonkers. Um, so yeah, his defensive package looks insane up till now. And then next up we get Skin Like Titanium, which is a 0-value defense. Oh boy. With a boost value of 1, it says after combat, if you lost the combat, deal damage to the opposing fighter equal to the amount of combat damage you took. You have 2 copies. So 0-value blocks are usually really weird due to their effects. If you ever see a 0-value block, you know, oh shit, this is either insanely strong or really specific. This one is actually just bananas. Like, dealing the same amount of combat damage you took back to the opponent can be huge auto damage potential. For example, maybe if Bigfoot comes and smacks you with a larger than life, so a lock, which is a 6-value attack, you would both take 4 damage, which is insane. Um, on the first look, that might sound a bit bad because you yourself as Luke only have 13 health, so taking 4 damage with Luke is way worse than taking 4 damage with Bigfoot, who has 16 health. But on the other hand, you played this on defense, so usually against melee fighters, you will then be able to double attack them, and you have usually more higher attacks than they do. So yeah, sure, your health might be a bit more valuable than your opponent's, but this card is the definition of Luke's punch them harder than they punch you playstyle. Um, so what I tend to do if I'm playing against those big smackers, Achilles, Bigfoot, they tend to be Luke's weakness, but this card just creates a big threat because if Bigfoot maybe is at 8 health, and then he already used all of his hoaxes, he smacks you with a lock, you play this, you both take 4, and now 2 sixes are lethal. Out of nowhere. This can just create so weird situations. If your opponent doesn't think about it, you both take 5, then you smack them with 2 sixes and they're dead. Out of nowhere. Which is insane. So often, this card is of course really situational because maybe you didn't play it against the biggest attack of your opponents or you're just too low on health to actually reliably play this. But it can create some really weird situations where you just deal basically like 10 damage in 1 turn, which is insane. So a bit situational, but definitely a threat that the opponent will have to think about when playing against Luke. And then we get to the last block card, which is for Misty only this time. It's a 1-value block named Got My Back. Um, two, two boost value. Immediately, Misty Knight may swap spaces with Luke Cage. If she does, Luke Cage is now the defender. You have 2 copies. So 1-value blocks are bad. I mean, 1-value blocks are just, ugh, why do you even play a block? Being able to swap with Luke, however, is quite nice because you can keep Misty alive with that, and then you will catch the opponent off guard because they intended to attack Misty, but then, hey, Luke is in their face, and they are, oh no, that was my second action, I can't run away, and then Luke smacks them with 2 sixes. Oh no. Also, if you swap, Luke still gets his ability, turning this basically into a 3-value block, in which case it's way better. 3-value blocks are quite normal-ish, but it's really good, definitely. If you don't swap, this is basically just a blank one, which is insanely bad. Of course, if you somehow still keep Misty alive just by doing that with that 1 health, it's still worth it. But I think not swapping with this card is most of the time a mistake, just because Misty is so valuable, having that extra body that can attack from ranged. Um, yeah, overall, decent card to keep her alive, but also nothing too special. And then we get to the last card in the deck, which is a scheme called Where's My Money? It is for Luke only. 1 boost value, 2 copies. It says place Luke Cage adjacent to the nearest opposing fighter. Gain 1 action. So placing Luke adjacent to the nearest opposing fighter and gaining the action is of course really nice to create some double attack opportunities. Against solo fighters, you can basically just play this whenever you want, even if you're playing on Yukon and you're maybe 12 spaces away, you can just warp next to them when you feel like, um, which is of course really good. And then you smack them with 2 6s, and they're like, "Holy shit! I took, I don't know, 4 damage, 5 damage." Um, if your opponent has a sidekick, they will usually position around this. What I mean by that is if they don't want you to attack the sidekick with this and don't want next to the sidekick, they will put their hero nearer to you, closer to you, and vice versa. So there is definitely counterplay to this if the opponent has multiple bodies. However, if 2 fighters are the same distance away from Luke, so maybe say both are 4 spaces away, you can actually decide which one you want to play this at, basically. So which one you want to be adjacent to. So that's quite nice. This is a really valuable card since mobility is usually your biggest weakness with Luke, except for your draw order. So since we talked about earlier that you only have 5 3 boosts in the deck, this is a really good card because no matter where your opponent is, you can always guarantee to attack them twice with this. Kind of if they don't have anything to move away on the first attack. So that's really valuable. So I think this is a really underrated card in this deck where you often just recur with still standing just to get that guaranteed extra hit on them, no matter where they are at any point. Really good. And yeah, don't underestimate this. Always position around it. It's really important. So yeah, let's get to the conclusion. Overall, I would say Luke is a very polarizing fighter that can reach from feeling basically unstoppable if he has the right draw with trash talks ending the turn, having basically +2 defense the whole time, not taking any damage, smacking you with 6s, uh, to a total pushback. If he doesn't draw his right cards, if he doesn't draw the trash talks and just never defends and just has blank 2s and takes maybe 6 damage on the first turn, yeah, rip. A big reason for this, of course, is this very polarized deck. You have a total of 14 red cards and 9 blue cards, which can lead to your hand just bricking up with one of them. So maybe at some point you will have maybe a full hand of blues when you want to attack your opponent. Or maybe you only have Misty cards because 6 of your cards are Misty only, and she's already dead, so you're not able to attack them. Or on the other hand, since you have 14 red cards, it's not unlikely that at some point you won't have any defense, and then the opponent will just smack you. Often in games, this can lead to big consistency issues, just due to how your deck is distributed, but in the games where we do get the right draw, Luke is a monster. With a total of 7 6s um, and 2 5s to throw, he probably has one of the scariest offensive packages in the whole game. I don't think any other fighter can deal so much damage consistently than Luke can. Other than that, you also have a mean fatigue game, just due to still standing, that your opponent will always have to think about. If at some point they don't have any more ways to stop it, well, you can lay back and chill, and you have basically won the game if you don't die. Um, his blocks, even though there are not many of them, are all really threatening, um, making your opponents think twice if they actually want to attack you, which is probably his biggest strength. Often, even if you don't have any defense in hand, maybe you have 7 cards in hand, you position in the center of the map, you just pretend like you have them. Because in worst case, they still attack you. Yeah, you defend for a blank too. Might suck, but they have to have the balls to do that. Because if they, of course, attack into something like a trash talk, and their effect gets cancelled and the turn ends, well, and you double attack them, that might be really bad. Just the threat of your blocks like Trash Talk and Empowerment still have potentially having them, because they of course don't know if you have good or bad draw. That can change games. So Luke is the type of fighter where I think the mind game of thinking, yeah, even if I don't have defense, I still go in there and pretend like I have. In most cases with fighters, that's not a good idea because their blocks are not that threatening, and the opponent will just attack once and then maneuver away. With Luke, you can't do that. You can't do that against Luke. That's insane. So I think Luke just, no matter which cards he has in hand, always ends adjacent to the opposing fighter on its turn. Basically always. Except if they have like any ping abilities or something. Just to threaten trash talk. So overall, Luke can be quite versatile with his playstyle, but you will definitely have to improvise a lot in his games, since you will rarely get a perfect draw. If at some point you don't have defense anymore in your hand, of course your opponent doesn't know that, but you have to really improvise quickly. Do I still go in? Do I back off and maybe overdraw? Or on the other hand, if I get suboptimal attacks, what do I do with that? You can never play a consistent game where you always have multiple options with Luke. At some point, you will have only one single thing that you can always do, or nothing. So you'll have to improvise a lot. So if you're comfortable adjusting your playstyle on the fly, Luke is perfect for you. If not, maybe try somebody else. And then we get to Luke's card tier list. Of course, placements of these cards can change depending on the matchup. I don't think Luke has any D or C tier cards, which already shows the power budget that is in this character. In B tier, I would say we have got my back. The swap, it can reach from a blank 1 to a blank 3 block, which is out of your cards probably the worst by far. Then we got Regroup and Pushback, the 2-3 boosts that usually also get used as those just to reach the opponent or to boost up here for higher. Um, Other than that, good bait attacks, and for Regroup, I guess it's still a nice defense for Luke. And then in A tier, Hero for Hire, good bait, but also can be a 6. Daughter of the Dragon, often a 6. You just feel bad when you play it on not adjacency. Skin like Titanium can be uh, a bit situational, but in the cases where it does pop off, it's hella good. And then get paid, winning with a 4-way attack, not that important in this case, but it's still a 4-way attack, you don't complain. And then we have 6 cards in S tier. Holy crap. Commanding, 5-value attack. Boom. Trash Talk, one of the best defenses in the game. Boom. Where's my money? Warp into double attack with big attacks. Boom. Still standing. Infinite recursion. Yeah. Power Man, another 4-value block that also deals 1 ping damage and can move the opposing fighter. What do you want more? And then blank 6. Sweet Christmas to all of you. If anyone is watching this at Christmas, sweet Christmas to you. Yeah. Luke's cards overall are insane. All of them separately are just so good, but of course, biggest drawback, you never get them when you want them. And then we get the matchups. This tier list is of course only based on personal experiences, so feel free to disagree in the comments. Also, I would take this tier list with a grain of salt, because even if a matchup should be in the even or Luke favorite tier, if you have shit draw, that can drop down to slightly bad or don't try it. On the other hand, any don't try it or slightly bad tiers, if you have perfect draw, can turn into Luke favorite or feel almost free win. This is just the average experience that you will usually have in the matchups. And I think there are only 2 ones that I would consider don't try it for Luke, which are Bigfoot and Sherlock. Bigfoot just slaps you too hard. He basically almost starts with lethal. He has 6 auto damage from Jack, and then 3 sixes, which is already 12 of your health gone. So he has to find only 1 single damage. And of course, since he has so good blocks, you will have a hard time actually killing him. And then Sherlock, well, Sherlock will run away. Sherlock's defenses are insane, and then he will just auto damage you to death with Counterpunch, Master of Disguise, and uh, Confirmed Suspicion. Like if you have seen my Sherlock versus Bigfoot back game from Summer of Legends, the last one, yeah, with Luke it's even worse. And then slightly bad are mostly characters that can either just slap you way too hard or have a lot of auto damage. Invisible Man and Settler, for example, Houdini also, and then we have the big slappers like Achilles, Moon Knight, Alice, Annie, Houdini as well, Rex. Medusa has her pings, Drac has pings, and then Beast form, which is just insanely high. Even matchups are usually just the ones that have a bit of everything. Tomoe is decent overall. Ingen, Electra is also even because you can farm still standing on the hand. Um, Yen and Wukong value monsters that can try to deplete your defenses, and Red, for example, who also has a lot of auto damage, but you have ways around that. And then the Luke favorite ones, most notably, basically everything else from TTA. So Tesla, Jill, and Bat. Luke is really good against them. She-Hulk, also, probably Luke favorite. Doctor Strange as well has a horrible time against Luke, triggering his healing, and then you smack him way too hard. And then something like Widow as well, who of course doesn't have high attacks, but her schemes can definitely make your life a bit tough sometimes. And then we have many matchups in almost free run, although none of them are so much meta relevant. The most relevant ones would probably be, I don't know, Genie, Winter Soldier, and Robin, who just basically can give up whenever they start playing against Luke. Um, so yeah, and then we get to the maps. Like I said before, since Luke's mobility really sucks, he really wants a move 4 center map. So any move 5 map, you'll always have to think about your boost values, and your opponent will usually try to fatigue you. So if you have a map, pick a move 4 map. Other than that, since Misty is really valuable for you, having a few pockets to hide her is really nice. So in my opinion, top 3 maps would be something like Raptor Paddock, which is move 4. Really good for aggressive fighters. You can move people into the pit with Power Man or Pushback, and then just Unga Bunga them while staying in their face, basically denying them their turns with Trash Talk, and then just smacking them with sixes. Really good. Um, Globe, you have these wonderful pockets and these single zones where you can hide Misty. It's still move 4 map. And it forces adjacency very often against range fighters. And then Hanging Gardens with Power Man and Pushback or Trash Talk, you can often get some sneaky +1 attacks, which, well, if you haven't noticed, if you can slap with sixes, slapping with sevens is even better. And then honorable mention, I would say, is also Rex Paddock, although that one is probably just like that, an honorable mention for fourth pick if these three should be banned. Um, yeah, so thank you for watching. This was a bit shorter than usual, just because I feel like Luke's deck is a bit simpler than usual ones. He doesn't have many crazy effects except for like maybe something like Still Standing and Trash Talk where you have to talk about it a lot. So yeah, feel free to write feedback or questions in the comments. Also, please tell me which character you want me to cover next. Planned are Black Panther for next time, and then after that, I think I'll have the time to look at Genie. We'll see how that goes. I might have to change that depending on what actually happens in that time. But if I change it, I will definitely inform you through my community tab. And now also on the list are Yanenga, Houdini, and new Wukong. Wukong is cool. But yeah, until next time.